The year is 1793. A new nation stands on shaky ground. 13 states, one fragile union, and a question that echoes through every street. Can this experiment survive? Imagine building a country from scratch. No blueprint, no safety net, just raw ambition, clashing ideas, and a whole lot of uncertainty. Between 1793 and 1830, the United States wasn't just growing, it was fighting to define itself. Presidents weren't just leaders, they were architects. Political parties weren't just teams, they were battlegrounds. And every decision, from banking to war, shaped the soul of a nation that had barely taken its first breath. This isn't just a history lesson. It's the story of how America became America through conflict, compromise, and a relentless push to survive. When George Washington took office in 1789, the United States was more idea than reality. 13 states had agreed to unite, but unity was fragile. The capital kept moving from New York to Philadelphia, and finally to Washington, D.C. The Constitution was fresh ink. The government was untested, and the people, they were watching closely. Washington's administration had one job: prove this experiment could work. With Alexander Hamilton leading the Treasury, they tackled debt, built a national bank, and created a tax system. These weren't just policies, they were lifelines. But not everyone agreed. Thomas Jefferson and James Madison feared too much central power, so they formed an opposition party. And just like that, America had its first political divide. This video walks through the early republic, from Washington's presidency to Jackson's rise. We'll look at the wars, the awakenings, the rebellions, and the policies that shaped a young nation. No fluff, just the real story of how America found its footing. Washington didn't want to be king. He refused a third term, setting a precedent that lasted over a century. But during his time, he laid the foundation. Hamilton's financial system gave the government teeth. The Bank of the United States helped stabilize the economy. Tariffs and taxes gave it fuel. To calm fears of tyranny, Congress passed the Bill of Rights, 10 amendments that protected speech, religion, and more. But tensions grew. Jefferson and Madison pushed back, forming the Democratic Republicans. Hamilton's supporters became the Federalists. The Jay Treaty with Britain sparked outrage among Jeffersonians, and the country split into two camps. The first party system was born. Not everyone liked the new taxes. In 1794, Western settlers protested a liquor tax in what became the Whiskey Rebellion. Washington sent troops to shut it down, showing that the federal government meant business. Meanwhile, native resistance continued. The Northwest Indian War and Cherokee American conflicts tested federal authority. These weren't just skirmishes, they were battles over land, identity, and survival. John Adams won the 1796 election. War with France loomed. The Federalists passed the Alien and Sedition Acts to silence critics. They built up the army, with Hamilton at the helm. But Adams surprised everyone. He sent a peace mission to France. The quasi-war ended, and the Federalists split. After the Revolution, slavery looked different across the states. Northern states began abolishing it. The Upper South made it easier to free slaves. By 1810, over 13% of Black Americans were free. In 1807, Congress banned U.S. involvement in the Atlantic slave trade, but demand for slave labor kept growing in the South, especially with the rise of cotton. Religion surged. Starting around 1790, the Second Great Awakening swept through the country. Baptist and Methodist preachers gained followers fast. By 1820, church membership exploded. This wasn't just about faith, it sparked reform movements like abolition and temperance. People believed they could change society, not just save souls. Jefferson crushed Adams in the 1800 election. His biggest move, the Louisiana Purchase in 1803, it doubled the country's size and opened the door to westward expansion. He sent Lewis and Clark to map it out. But Jefferson didn't trust cities or banks. He believed in farmers independent, self-reliant, and free. He also tried to weaken the courts. But Chief Justice John Marshall had other plans. In 1803, the Marbury v. Madison case gave the Supreme Court the power to strike down unconstitutional laws. That changed everything. British ships were harassing American vessels. They were forcing sailors into service and backing native resistance in the Midwest. In 1812, Congress declared war. It didn't go well at first. American militias were weak. Invasions into Canada failed. The British blockaded ports, wrecked trade, and burned Washington in 1814. But there were wins too. William Henry Harrison took Lake Erie. Andrew Jackson crushed British forces in the southeast and later at New Orleans. The war ended in 1815. The peace treaty kept borders the same, but pride soared. Americans saw themselves as a real nation, not just a collection of states. After the war, the Federalists faded. Their opposition to the war had cost them support. President James Monroe pushed unity. The Republicans adopted Federalist ideas, like chartering the Second Bank of the United States in 1816 and protecting industries with tariffs. Monroe's presidency marked a calm period. His Monroe Doctrine in 1823 warned Europe to stay out of the Americas. It was bold, idealistic, and a turning point in foreign policy. Andrew Jackson ran for president in 1832 with a clear message: Jackson and no bank. He believed the Second Bank of the United States gave too much power to elites, so he shut it down in 1836. Instead, he backed state-run pet banks. It was a controversial move, but it showed Jackson's commitment to what he saw as the common man. Between 1793 and 1830, the United States didn't just survive, it transformed. It built a government, fought wars, expanded its borders, and wrestled with deep moral questions. Political parties rose and fell. Religion sparked reform. Slavery shifted but didn't disappear. And through it all, leaders made choices that shaped the country's future. This wasn't a smooth ride. It was messy, loud, and full of conflict. But that's what made it real. These decades laid the groundwork for everything that came next, from civil war to industrial growth to global power. If you found this video helpful, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe to Ancient Survival Stories. We break down history not just to understand the past, but to see how people fought, adapted, and built the world we live in today. Drop a comment below if there's a moment from this era you want us to cover in more detail. And if you want more stories like this, raw, human, and packed with meaning, stick around. We've got plenty more coming.